So we need to move to the next speaker. So the next speaker will be, oops, it's on the correct side, Margaret. Yes, Margaret, it's you. Hello, how are you?
Hello. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we hear you okay. Sorry, we are really a bit late. Sorry about that. So Margaret is from my community, so I'm really proud to have her in our workshop. She's a combustion scientist, and she will give a talk about her work and her journey. Can you share your screen?
Yes. Yeah. You would think I would be better at this point, a couple of years later, right?
It's okay. No worries. We have some support here. It's way of success.
Sure. Can you see it okay?
Not yet. Yes.
No? Okay. And then I just need to put it into... There we go. Okay, so do you see the presentation mode?
Not yet. No, we still see the... Yeah, that's it. We have it now. Thank you.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And well, that's a tough act to follow. So Jen was awesome. So I will try and bring maybe a tenth of the enthusiasm we just saw. So, but first of all, I do want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. This is a wonderful conference. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to share with you. And I was hoping to make this interactive, so I'm hoping that you will be willing to ask questions. And so what I actually have is probably the worst thing you wanted, which is a bunch of advice. So I'm going to start with just a really brief introduction to who I am and the type of work that I do. And I'm just going to talk that background to you, because I figure you're probably from a very diverse scientific backgrounds. And then I wanted to give you my pearls of wisdom. And my first piece of advice will be, take what you want and leave the rest behind. So my first piece of advice is, you can choose which advice you decide to listen to. So that's kind of my starter, my foundation for you. So let me give you a little bit on my background and kind of how I got to where I am. So, and of course, I do want to pause for a moment and thank all the organizers. So Deanna, Nadine, and Susanna, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak with you. This is great. I think this is a fantastic conference. So I am a professor at the University of Michigan. I am in my tenure appointment, resides within the mechanical engineering department, and I have what they call a dry appointment in the aerospace engineering department. That means essentially I have zero responsibilities, but I get some of the benefits of being in aerospace. I just bring up some of these details so that if you have questions about these types of positions, that I can try and help answer or guide you on those. Importantly, when I came to the University of Michigan, the aerospace department had no women faculty, no women on their faculty at all. And at the time, the president of the university came to the aerospace department and said, "You're not hiring another single person until you change that." And so the department chair at the time, and like Jen mentioned, you'll get an opportunity to have some wonderful role models and mentors, and some you bump into and some are very intentional. And Wei Shi was the chair of the aerospace engineering department at the time. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, would you like to be joint appointment?" And he reached out to actually about 2 or 3 other people, including Elaine Oren, who also became a significant role model and mentor in my career and life. And so again, you have some people that you get an opportunity to meet that will be just by chance. So moral of the story is I did let me come back to the moral. I did my undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois in mechanical engineering. And then I got my, that was my bachelor's degree, and I got my master's and my doctoral degrees at Stanford University in California. And immediately after graduating, and I mean, took off the robe and got in the car, drove to Texas to be on the faculty at Texas A&M University. And when I went to Texas A&M, I was the only woman in the department for their mechanical engineering department. And up until that point in my career, I really hadn't paid attention to kind of the gender balance. Stanford, like in mechanical engineering, it's generally probably about 10% women. It might be a little bit different than that now, but not much. And so I was pretty much always surrounded by men and worked with men. So when I went to Texas A&M, I honestly didn't really notice it much. And I actually had, again, some awesome role models and mentors. Actually, the department chair that hired me was Bud Peterson at the time, and he was fantastic, great person to work for. So I would say it was a little bit gender blind at the time. Just I looked at the environment as being pretty supportive. But we had a two-body opportunity. People like to call it two-body problem. I will say it was two-body opportunity. My partner and I were in Texas and doing pretty monstrous commutes. My husband worked for Exxon at the time, and I worked for Texas A&M. If you're familiar with the state of Texas, that meant we were commuting. I was commuting 150 miles a day. So unfortunately, a significant part of the global warming can be attributed to me. So we decided that was not sustainable. We both enjoyed our careers, but it wasn't sustainable. And I was approached by a colleague who would become my colleague to apply for a position at the University of Michigan. And we relocated to Michigan in 1998, and I've been there ever since. So that's kind of the pathway that I took to get to my current position. As was mentioned, I work in combustion science, and so I'm an experimentalist, so I really needed physical infrastructure to do my work. I need physical infrastructure to do my work, and that's a whole challenge that I'm happy to discuss with any of you. And I'm particularly interested in renewables, sustainable fuels. I work both with industry, and I also work with kind of federal sponsoring agencies. It's kind of who funds my work. It's been a great path. I can definitely tell you that my research has been affected by the path that I've taken. So if I had stayed at Texas A&M University, I probably would have been more of an aerosol researcher because that was the opportunity and the colleagues that I worked with there. And at the University of Michigan, we had a really strong combustion program, and there was real resources and opportunity there. So I was definitely shaped in a really good way. It was certainly not like I was bent on a pretzel. I enjoyed the opportunity to kind of develop in combustion research. So, and I still enjoy it, so I still do it. Like Jen mentioned, there weren't a whole lot of role models. We had one woman on the faculty in the mechanical engineering department before I got there. Fantastic theoretical mechanics person, Maria Komnenu. Maria was in the process of remaking herself. So in her, we will say her more senior years, she decided to go get a law degree. And then she decided that she would jump ship, and she went and decided to join a law practice after that. And this was well into her 60s when she did this. So she was always learning, never changing. So she was a great role model in that respect. But there wasn't really a path for you could follow if you were a woman in engineering. And so there were a group of us, I think about 7 of us were hired all around about plus or minus a couple of years. And each of us kind of bundled up into kind of couplets and became really fast friends. And so like a good friend of mine said, we were kind of feeling our way around in the dark in the cave together. So if one of us bumped into a wall, we would share it with the others. So we did help each other, and we had a lot of strong peer-to-peer mentoring. But in terms of kind of more senior mentoring, there weren't a lot of role models. So you just kind of had to really learn as you go. I too have really benefited from wonderful, wonderful people that I've worked with over the years. And I really need to say whatever credit that I have achieved or contributions that I have made in research, it's not me, it's the wonderful people I've had the opportunity to work with. And what was funny is after that last comment, I looked at my lab group there and I'm like, they're all guys, which is funny because as you'll see, this photo was taken in 2015. And we're almost all women right now. And as Jen mentioned, it's happened organically. What you may or may not notice in that group is that we've got several Latino members of our community, and that was fantastic because that's an even smaller minority in the University of Michigan in mechanical engineering specifically. And so it, again, create the inclusive environment and you will get wonderful, wonderful people to come and work with you. And to me, my most important criteria that I apply for interviewing people for my group are their communication skills and their willing, and their inclusive kind of behavior. Like how do they operate? Kind of what way do they bring, that diversity to our team where they're supportive of each other. So we build a community. So I think that's really, really important. So again, wonderful people, and I really need to acknowledge them. Apparently my slides are set on some secret timer. So sorry about that. I'm going to be fighting their timer. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is just a series of, again, pearls of wisdom. So take what you want, leave the rest behind. In your career, and importantly, what I wanted for you is I wanted to give you actionable recommendations. So I wanted you to not just be able to think about things, which is super important, but I wanted you to be able to act on information. So I'm going to try and give you actionable advice. You will have opportunities. You will have the opportunity to interact with many different people throughout your career, and you already have that opportunity now. You have to decide how many of these interactions you want to maintain and how you juggle those relationships. And I would suggest that you kind of think about that and prioritize, because you can get in over your head. You can get overcommitted. And then you're really going to struggle, and that makes it a lot less fun, and that makes it stressful. So you definitely want to decide what are the level of interactions you want and how many at each level. So you can have deeply collaborative. These are people that you work with really closely. Maybe you write papers with them. Maybe you share committees with them, co-chair committees with them, PhD theses and things like that. That to me is very deeply collaborative. You can have somewhat collaborative, and this committee here I specifically had in mind was like, maybe you work on a professional society committee. So maybe you work on, a papers committee for your next upcoming meeting. And then you can have people that you just interact with in a way that you like them. You say hello as you pick up some coffee at the coffee machine, but you don't necessarily engage with them in a really deep way. And those are the different kind of levels I see. For me, personally, I can do about 6 deeply collaborative activities at a time. That's about it. Because in the way I kind of think of it, and again, I apologize, because many of you will go to places like industry. You won't necessarily go to academia, and those are great career paths. I think you will have analogous relationships. So I would urge you to kind of map them towards what your professional career looks like. But like a deeply collaborative to me would be, I work on 6 projects with somebody, or we have 6 shared graduate students. That's a lot. That for me is very difficult to manage that personally. I have trouble delegating. So again, I would suggest think about that and don't overcommit yourself. So you will have opportunities. Importantly, you don't have to say yes to everything. And one of the funniest things I ever heard was one of the women, again, we all started together, like, again, that group of 7. And women was, Dawn was asked, can you do this thing? And Dawn's answer was, do I have to say yes? And she thought that was great. I'm like, what a great response. And the answer was, no, you don't have to say yes to everything. So you can decide what your standards for engagement are. And what's really, really important are these last 2 bullet items here, is there's going to be a point where at the beginning, not too many people are going to ask you to review a paper. They're just trying to learn who you are and what your expertise is. And so they'll be like, you have one request to review a paper. Sorry, I'm in the house with many clocks. So you're going to hear my clocks go nonstop. And the point is that then you reach a point, like now I'll get like 5 requests to review a paper a day. So I'm like, okay, yeah, no. And so I will review paper for friends and colleagues, when it's not a conflict of interest. I will review on topics where I consider myself to be a deep expert, but I also give myself a break and say, you know what, not today. I've got too many. I got 6 in a queue at any particular time. So no one is going to protect your self-interest except you, because they don't know what's happening to you. So you have the right to be selfish and protect your time. On the other hand, our organizations all work because we volunteer and because we participate. So be generous, but be generous with the groups that you want to share with. So for me, I prioritize student groups. I prioritize opportunities like this today. I prioritize the opportunity to mentor and to meet people and talk about like career paths and things like that. So you can decide what your priorities are going to be and just apply them as much as you can. But watch yourself for overcommitment, because again, in particular, if you're in a community where you are underrepresented, you will be tapped more frequently than others because you are underrepresented. So you don't have to say yes to everything. Don't say no to everything too. And so this is kind of see above, be generous, be selfish. Your time is actually your most precious resource. Some opportunities, this is the whole premise behind the title of my talk, which was, you don't know what you don't know. Some opportunities may not have a known benefit. You don't know what they are, but it's okay to take a risk. So you can try things and you can decide, you know what, like Jen said, yeah, I think I'd rather have a failure than have the regret. So these are like, you may have the opportunity to say lead task force that is on something very specific. Maybe it's on increasing inclusion in the laboratory or something that's important to you. And you may not realize that, hey, maybe that's going to actually have an opportunity to write a paper on it, or for you to, you know, start a student organization. So it's okay to take risks. And I do want to encourage you to do that. Again, just watch that you can manage your own time. So this is probably, I think, the negative side, which I was really hesitant, but I think it's also really important. I think you need to have, and hear this if you haven't before, is that you will have confrontations in your professional career if you haven't already. You may have already done it. And it could be because of your gender, it could be because of maybe you're vegetarian, or maybe it's, you know, there are all sorts of identities that could be weaponized or could be used as a source of confrontation. So that stuff's going to happen. That's inevitable. And what I would present to you is that choose your battles. And this was something like, you don't need to have every fight. And you have to decide if this is the fight that you actually want to raise your voice on. Some bad analogies are, you know, you don't have to be the fly in the teapot every single time. You don't have to be the one that comes and says the emperor has no clothes every time. I'll warn you that's so, like, for example, again, because I'm in a department that's, you know, predominantly male, predominantly cis, predominantly white, you know, I'll look around and practically every single day, I will have the opportunity to say, ooh, what you just did there was a micro, not a micro bias, what we call them, microaggression is a microaggression. You'll see it all the time. Like, we'll vote to decide whether or not a new course should be accepted into the curriculum. And if a woman has brought the course into being, has shepherded it through the system, they'll set new standards for voting. We'll have things like, well, does somebody else, you know, do we have redundancy? Do we have a fail-safe? Like, are there multiple people that can teach this course, or is it only Professor Jane Smith that can teach this course? So you sit there and you watch it happen. You're like, oh, okay, but is that today's fight that I want to fight? And I'll say, you know, no. Sometimes I just watch it happen and I just document it, take angry notes that I then, you know, just put in my back pocket. But there will be times, and for me, where they are high stakes situations, and I'm like, and no, today this shall not pass. And that's happened, and sometimes for me personally, that's gotten fairly ugly. And just to give you some sort of calibration, for me, that's when we hire new faculty. Is that when I'm like, no, that's so important to our climate, to our culture, to our future as a department, that I will lay down across the tracks and I will say, nope, not today. This is not allowed to happen. And I've had a couple faculty kind of push back on me. And one time it was just open aggression. And that was a real disappointment because a lot of I had three, more on this later, I had three allies in the room that did not link arms with me and did not support me in the moment. The other one was another microaggression, and I was able to just steer the situation so that I didn't call them out, the other faculty member, for being, in this case, it was sexist. I'm like, no, you're being misogynist and sexist. I didn't say that. I was just like, well, let's think about the process that we've used and let's apply the process. And in both cases, I was successful in the sense that the people that we were discussing should have been made offers. That was appropriate. It was merited. They were exceptional. And I'm happy to say both are my colleagues right now. But there are times, like over course listing, I'm like, not worth it. Not worth the fight for me to point out that you've just changed the standards. And it just so happened to be when a woman was making a suggestion for a new course. So again, choose your battles, choose your battlefields. And then my next thought, oops, sorry, oh, too much. Here we go. And then this was kind of what I was discussing before, which is choose your allies. So if you are particularly in an environment where you know that there's, these microaggressions, which is pretty much every environment, my strong recommendation is don't put yourself in a high risk situation if you don't have an ally. So if you're going to be on a faculty search committee, make sure you have a friend and colleague that is like-minded, that you can turn to and say, did you see that? Are you going to let that happen? That's really critical. That's really, really important that you have somebody that can do that. And I'll say that, I've served on many committees. You'll have the opportunity to serve on many committees. You'll have fewer opportunities to lead committees. And I don't know if you can see the gray hairs here, but in my ripe old age, I have made a line in the sand for me that says, I won't lead a committee unless I get to pick the committee members. I will not. Life's too short and I want to enjoy it. So I was asked to chair a search committee, faculty search for new hires. And I said, I'll do it if I get to pick the committee and it gets to be 3 people, me and 2 others. So they agreed to it. And I'm like, which was a miracle in and of itself. My department chair agreed to it. And she was actually very, very supportive. And we made offers and hired 4 people, which is amazing. We did that during a global pandemic. So we were pretty proud of ourselves. But it was only because I worked with people that, these aren't people that I go to, weekend dinners with or anything like that, but they were people that were like-minded. They were colleagues that I'd worked with for years that I had 100% trusted. So I was able to help what I felt move our department in a really positive direction. Oh, by the way, all 4 were minorities. All were underrepresented, the faculty we hired. We were so proud of ourselves. It was awesome. It was such a wonderful thing to be a part of. And so that was just a really great opportunity. It wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a team that was in lockstep. And then the converse is, if you're going to ask somebody to work with you, you should be an ally to others as well. So you need to be able to be willing to serve in those roles. And then my other recommendation to you is, you may not realize this, is that if you do end up in your professional career having people that you just can't work with, you say, this person really hates my work, or this person is really mean to me, or this person has a reputation in the community or the field as being difficult to work with. Most of the processes that are transparent will allow you to prohibit people from engaging in your work. So like if you apply to an agency for funding, you can say, hey, please don't use this person. If you go up for tenure and promotion, you can say, please don't use this person. And that's generally baked into the system. Conversely, you can also say, hey, these are the people that I'd like you to use as my reviewers, please and thank you. So that's important, you know, in those kind of transparent processes, there are those opportunities. And similarly, you know, again, just like I say, I'm not going to lead a committee that I can't pick the committee members. I similarly will go to people, they'll ask me to work on a committee and I'll say, who's on it? What's your list? Give me the list. I'm not going to sign up till you tell me the list. And then, you know, I'll go down the list and I'll say, no, you've got this person right here. If you want that person, you can't have me. You get one or both, but not, you know, you get one or the other, but not both. I can say that because, again, I know that that comes from a position of kind of surviving and getting to the kind of the top of my pecking order. So that is something that you want to use with discretion. I admit that. But I also think there are tons of good problems. There are tons of good opportunities. You really can create the microclimate that you want to exist in. I really feel strongly that you can do that. And that's, like Jen said, you're essentially creating your network in the people that you work with. And then you just keep building that network outward as you move along. So again, I hope that doesn't sound pompous, but I do hope that you take the opportunity to work with people that you like throughout your career, because again, life's short, enjoy it. You should be able to, out of all of these confrontations and things, also understand what outcome are you trying to achieve. And it's also been extremely well documented that even if you don't win the battle, whatever it is, trying to, actually get maybe that person hired, or maybe you're trying to get a rule changed because you think it's not very inclusive. Having the open discussion is proven to move opinions closer towards moderation, towards inclusion, towards equity and equality. So don't beat yourself up if you don't win every one of them. And I certainly didn't for a very, very long time. And part of it's just understanding and developing strategy. But understand that having the conversation actually helps the community. So do have the conversation. I do think that's really important. And because there's a lot of inertia in the system against both the visible and invisible identities, understand you really need to be ultra supportive. It's kind of like the super molecules Jen was talking about. You really have to be kind of above and beyond. One of the schools in our neighborhood has a sign outside that says, be kinder than necessary. And that's exactly right. There's a lot of inertia against women, LGBTQ+, minority and other identities, again, seen and unseen identities. Changing that inertia takes large and sustained efforts. It can't be just a single intervention. It needs to be a sustained intervention. So advocate for your friends and colleagues, regardless of our identities. Be the person that you want to be. And with that, I tried to practice this. I'm not sure I'm going to get it. Saktin Galari, I didn't do it at all close, but thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Margaret.
Sure.
Yes, sorry, I cannot correct you because my Arabic is. Did she say it correctly? Nope. Okay, what she was.
Not even close. I wasn't even close, and I practiced so much. I'm sorry.
شكرا جزيلا. شكرا جزيلا.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a short question for Margaret, because we are really behind in terms of. Okay, so just. Yeah, the clock is reminding us. This is really funny. There are so many clocks in your house. Yes, you show the picture of your group, and I feel, okay, I'm not the only one, because in my group, it's also the same. I'm the only woman and all the guys behind me, so I feel always a bit shame of that. So I'm happy that I'm not the only one in this situation. Actually, this is a real question. So do you, at one point in your career, do you succeed to reach a balance in your group, or do you see any improvement with the years in terms of gender balance?
Exactly. So actually right now it was really funny. I looked around the room. So a lot of those students in that photo have graduated. The majority of those students have graduated. So I looked around the room in my group more recently, and we actually are 75% women. I've got five doctoral students right now that are all women, which is the most I've ever had in my career. So it's awesome.
Okay, so I have a long journey, but I will make it also. Okay. So thank you very much. Thanks for your really inspiring talk, and hope to see you soon in the conferences.
Yes, good seeing you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.